When looking at simple living videos here on YouTube, a lot of them look like fairy tales. People living in a cottage on the countryside, maintaining beautiful gardens and having seemingly all the time of the world to dedicate to this lifestyle. It seems like they have a very idyllic life, and it's one of the main things I noticed when looking into simple and slow living. The world these channels live in seems beautiful, peaceful and serene, but these channels are often just telling a story or a dream. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that what these channels bring to YouTube is necessarily bad. Dreaming is something that everyone does, and it can help us to work or to strive towards certain goals, and in that sense I believe that dreams are something very powerful that can give us drive and motivation. And I'm also happy for those creators who can live that lifestyle, although I also expect that the less beautiful parts of their lifestyles isn't always shown in those videos. But the unfortunate truth is that this fairy tale-like lifestyle simply isn't a reality for most people. People live in different locations, in cities, in apartments. People have other responsibilities like needing to care for others or working a 9-to-5 job, making it difficult to live a similar lifestyle. These channels give us something to dream about, an escape or something to grow towards, but they don't give us something that most of us can apply in the here and now. So that's what this video is about: simple and slow living while having those other responsibilities, and then more specifically while working a 9-to-5 job. How can we combine those two aspects, living a slow life and full-time work? How do we not get consumed by the grind or the treadmill that work can be? And how can we be more mindful about how we approach work? This has definitely been an aspect I've been focusing on a lot over the past years, as I've had my own good and bad experiences with work. Over the years I have grown my understanding about work and developed healthy habits that supported me in combining working a full-time 9-to-5 job and simple and slow living, resulting in a more balanced outlook on work and life. And it's these mindset and habits that I would like to share with you in this video. Alright, to start with, I would first like to say some things about the mindset I have about work. Now, this may not work for everyone depending on how deeply you are involved with your work or what your current role may be at your company, but this mindset is definitely something that has helped me putting things into perspective, and that is that a job is often just a job. Now, what do I mean by this? I don't mean that you need to distance yourself from your work or act like an indifferent robot, not at all. For some, work may be like this, but personally I believe that there can be value in work and that you can get joy out of it, be it from the topics that you're working on or from with the colleagues that you're working together with. But for me, it means that I understand there's rarely a need to be worked up or frustrated when things don't go well at work. There will be things that go wrong, difficult conversations or even frictions. And that's okay. It's human to be frustrated from time to time when things don't go as planned, but it's also important to recognize this feeling, to understand where it's coming from and to be able to place it, and then also to move on from it or take a step back from it. I used to take this feeling of frustration home after work, and there were evenings where I just was talking to my girlfriend about how frustrated I was about work, what wasn't going well, that I wasn't enjoying it anymore, which of course can also be a sign that it's time to find something new. But nowadays I try to leave these frustrations at work when I walk out of the door in the evening, remembering that the next few hours of the day are mine and that I alone decide how they will go, and that they shouldn't be spent thinking about work, because otherwise it's just like you're never leaving work. And yes, my girlfriend and I still catch up about our days at work when we get home, but it's rare nowadays that I spend a lot of time talking about the frustrations that I may have had. I'd rather focus on the positive things that I experienced throughout my day. And that's what I mean with understanding that a job is just a job. Things will happen at work that frustrate you or that you don't like, but it's important to be able to place those things in their contexts, to leave them behind once I'm done with the workday, and then just to enjoy the rest of the day on my own terms. And it's this mindset that has helped me setting a healthier boundary between work and my personal life. So, I'm a strong believer that how you start your day helps setting the tone for the rest of your day. And this comes back for me in 2 points. First, the commute, and then secondly, first hour of your workday. I find that the commute can often set the mood for the day. In one of my previous jobs, I had a 1 hour commute single way by car, and that passed via the largest city of the country. And it didn't matter if I passed there at 7 a.m. or at 10 a.m. in the morning, there were always traffic jams. Also, on the way back in the evening, there were traffic jams, and honestly, it was depressing. Yes, I was listening to music or a podcast when driving to make the trip a bit more enjoyable, but I found that it didn't make the experience of traffic jams any less miserable. I found that these commutes were impacting my mood for the rest of the day, and I was not looking forward to work anymore when finally arriving on site after sitting in a traffic jam just to get there. And that has been one of the main reasons for me to find a job that was closer to home, a job that didn't take an hour for me to get there, sitting in a traffic jam, and ideally one that I could even cycle to. Eventually, I also found this job. The impact of this different commute was big for me. Instead of sitting still in a car for an hour, I got some exercise in before work and was able to spend some time outside. Cycling to work is a moment for me to naturally slow down before I start the workday, and it also gives me mental clarity. Of course, I understand that not everyone can cycle or walk to work, but I highly recommend to see how you can adjust your commute so that it works for you instead of against you. Maybe you can take public transit. Personally, I like to read a book, listen to something, or simply enjoy the views when commuting by train. Or if you really can't get around a car commute, having a small habit like going for a 10-minute walk around the block or doing morning stretches before work have greatly helped me with setting the tone for the day. And secondly, I find the first hour at work so important for setting the tone of the day. Personally, I'm a morning person, so those first few hours of the day I feel most productive, creative, and focused. For me, it's like prime time to get things done, as I know that my energy and focus levels will go down throughout the day. And because of that, I always try out blocking out that first hour of the day to focus on an important task that I need to get done that day. Nowadays, we live in a world where digital connectivity is very high. There are constantly notifications on your phone, there is Teams or Slack pinging you with new messages, and there are probably a couple of new emails in your inbox. Everything immediately tries to get your attention first thing in the morning, making the start of your day distracted and unfocused, right when it's actually the best time of the day to do the work that needs focus, or at least for me it is. It's for that reason that I avoid meetings as much as possible at the start of the day, and if I can, I don't even open my mailbox or messaging app for the first hour of the day or until I completed that first task. Because I know that those meetings, mails, or messages will distract me, stay in my head, and depending on what they were about, may even change the mood or the tone of the day. Completing that important task right at the start of the day gives me a feeling of accomplishment, and I know that I've probably done my single most important contribution for that day, after which it matters a little bit less how the rest of the day goes, because my day has already been a success. I find lunchtime a also important part of my day, especially because I have a desk job. I likely haven't moved as much during the day yet, nor have I gotten the needed fresh air while working at my desk. It's for this reason I much prefer to make use of my lunch break to the fullest and go for a walk outside. Especially in office jobs, I feel like the time can fly really by, like, really fast. Either I'm working focused on a task or I'm in back-to-back meetings, and then it's easy to forget to have some movements or to stretch from time to time. And then taking that lunch break and going for the walk really helps me getting that movement in for the day. I'm lucky that my current office park is close to nature, and within 5 minutes of walking I can get to the nearby forest, which I find works best to relax. But it doesn't necessarily have to be nature. If there is a park or a square nearby, that works perfectly as well. But personally, I find nature to be a very calming environment where I can come to rest. So, if the day before noon has been busy, hectic, or even frustrating, that walk through the forest really helps coming back to ease. There are days I'll go for a walk alone, and other days there may be a colleague joining, which is nice because you get to know the people you're working with in a different way rather than purely professional. And then once I get back into the office in the afternoon, I feel a little bit more refreshed and focused to tackle the rest of the day. Alright, now that we're in the afternoon, I would like to go a little bit deeper in my personal views about work or how I approach them. And the first one for me is to find a job that you're happy with or one that appreciates you. I know this sounds very stereotypical and that it isn't always possible to find a job that you're happy with. Even I have had jobs where I wasn't happy in the role that I had or where I wasn't appreciated at all. On top of that, depending on where you live, what your experiences are, and in general what your current situation is, it can be very difficult to find a job that you enjoy. There are really so many factors that can influence this. But I find that having positive job satisfaction is key in building a healthy and long-lasting relationship with work. And job satisfaction is something entirely personal and can mean a lot of different things. Everyone will have their own reasons or things that makes them satisfied in a job. For me personally, I much appreciate having autonomy and responsibility in the work I do. I also appreciate a company that supports me in what I do and helps me be the best version of myself and actively helps me growing in a direction that interests me. For you, the factors may be different what makes you happy in a job. Maybe you find having close colleagues important or having clear deliverables where you work towards something bigger or something entirely different. But that's up to you to find out what you're looking for and what satisfies you in a job. Another view I have on work is that we work to live and not live to work. I know this is again a very common saying, but one that I believe is also some truth in. For me, this one boils down to setting healthy boundaries at work and having a healthy balance between your work and your personal life, whatever that balance for you may be. One example from my personal life is a time when I was working as a project manager at a startup. My workload was already pretty much maxed out with projects to handle, but the company was looking to take on additional projects. At the time, I didn't know any better. I really liked the project and the technology we were working on, and I was eager to help the company as much as possible. So, of course, I said yes, that I could take on that extra project, eventually leading to me doing overtime and being extra frustrated with the project as after some time it became clear that the project wasn't well defined. For me, this could have been avoided if I set boundaries for myself at the time, or if I understood that it's okay to say no. Maybe I would have said no earlier if I knew what the project would require of me, or even if I knew that the project wasn't well defined. I also learned that if you keep saying yes to additional work, meetings, being available, or whatever it may be, it also starts setting expectations, and that every time there is something that needs to be done, they will come to you expecting that you will say yes and that you can do it. It was a good lesson for me to learn, and since then I have started setting healthier boundaries at work. I make sure that I'm not 24/7 available for work. I store my laptop away at the end of the day, and I removed work apps from my phone so I'm not accessible 24/7. I have learned that the company's goals are not necessarily my own personal goals, and I make sure to guard my time for personal hobbies and projects so that it doesn't get eaten up by work. And this also works in the other direction. If you know that you have an activity or a hobby planned in the evening and some additional non-critical work pops up at work, it's a bit more easy to say no to it without feeling guilty. And finally, on the note of saying no at work, I don't believe that this means that you don't care about your work, but rather that you're setting your priorities right and that you're focusing your energy on the things that actually matter and bring value. Being able to focus on those tasks, not being overwhelmed, and having a clear direction I'm working towards is something I personally find brings me energy and motivates me and helps me bringing my best self to the work I'm doing. Of course, it's important to communicate clearly as well on this. For example, have your manager aligned on where your priorities lie and on what work you are focusing on. Otherwise, it may look like you're not interested in your work if you're constantly saying no to tasks. So, these are a bit of my personal views on work that have helped me building a healthier relationship with work. It's some of the things that I've learned over the past years working in different roles and companies, sometimes the hard way, and that have now helped me live a more conscious, simple and slow life while working a full-time job. Finally, I want to give one last additional idea that I've seen people around me start doing a lot, and I've also seen becoming more of a trend with both younger and older generations, and that is to work part-time instead of full-time. This is probably the single most impactful tip that I can give to live more slowly, but it's also the tip that requires the biggest change to your life. Personally, I'm still working full-time, so it's not something that I'm doing myself at this moment, but if you have the opportunity or the possibility to accommodate working part-time instead of full-time, I believe it can drastically increase your quality of life and allows you to have more time to do the things that you value. One of the popular ways to look at this is, for example, if you are working 4 days out of 5, it's only a decrease of 20% in your work time, and depending on the taxes where you live, also your income, but you get 50% more free time. 1 extra day on top of the 2 days of weekend. And if you can stretch it even further to only having to work 3 days out of 5, you are losing out on 40% of your income, but you are also doubling your free time you have. Decreasing work to 60% is a big change, but alternatively working at 90%, so taking off half a day every week or an extra day off every 2 weeks, can already have a positive effect while minimally affecting your income. Working part-time is also something that you can start doing gradually, depending on what your life and your budget allows for. It's an exercise that you will have to do yourself to see if and how this would work for you, and there may also be other implications of working part-time, depending on the taxes, the laws and other regulations that may be in place in the country you are based in. So always do your own research. As I said, it's not something that I'm doing myself yet, but there are some people around me who started doing it, and there's also here on the Slow and Simple Living space there are people who are doing it, and all in all I've heard very much positive feedback about it. So if you can do it, I think that's great, and it's a large benefit to living life more on your own terms. Alright, well, the last point is not something that I'm doing myself yet. All the other ones were either habits or mindsets that I try to live by as much as possible, especially when the workday gets difficult or frustrating. While I fully believe that work can be a rewarding experience and can bring value or even meaning to your life, work simply is a large part of a lot of people their life, I also find it important to remember that work is often just a means to an end. There is more to life besides work, and there are hours every day outside of work that you can spend on things that matter to you. So, finding that balance and understanding how both your work and your personal life can well work together to create a more meaningful and fulfilling life is, in my opinion, one of the larger challenges in life, but also one that's definitely worth it. It's a challenge or journey that I've gone through, or rather am still going through, where I've already figured out some things, but there is still room to learn more and to grow further. But I hope that these ideas already gave you some insights on how to approach simple and slow living while working, be it 9 to 5, flexible, full-time or part-time, and that you can apply some of these in your own personal life. And with that said, thank you for watching and see you next time.